We're okay. Okay, welcome everybody to Alabama Blue School for March 2024. It's great to see everybody. I hear that we've got a couple of newly elected and minted county chairs. Do y'all want to say hi? Should we give them a round of applause and a welcome? Robin Monahan.
Excited.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Hi, Robin.
Good. Hi. I'm not showing my picture because I didn't put my makeup on.
A-okay.
Maybe next time. I
I
didn't know what it was gonna be. I didn't know it was gonna be like this. Anyway.
That's okay. That's okay. And there's Marianella. Hi, Marianella. Go ahead.
Marianella.
Yay! Beautiful. I have mine, but it's in the next room. I should have worn it. You're looking great. And Ralph Hendricks is a recently elevated chair of Chilton County Dems. So hi, Ralph.
Yes. Can you
Congrats.
hear me? Can
Yes,
you hear me now?
Yes, we had a Zoom
Good.
earlier. We can hear you this time. But guess what? We're going to ask everybody to mute, believe it or not.
No. Oh no. Yes.
I can mute you, I think.
Thank you.
So thanks everybody for coming out. We are tonight we have the Alabama Democratic Party's Executive Director, Tom Miro. And this will be the first in a series of presentations that lay out some core areas of organization that our county organizations need to be working on to gear up for November. So tonight is going to be about finances. And just quickly, I want to say what Blue School is. This is a program that we started. We're just a loose group, a working group of local organizers, Democratic organizers, grassroots organizers, and we wanted to follow the example of Georgia. And we thought that this would be a good chance for us to meet together once a month online to teach each other and learn from one another all the great things we need to know about organizing so we can build each other up and make connections. So that's what Blue School is. Everyone is invited, everyone is welcome. We record these and we put them on YouTube. We want these to be a resource for anyone who needs it. So I'm going to pass the evening over to Tom. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you so much, Emily, and thank you everybody for stopping by here. As Emily said, this is part of a series that Blue School has asked me to help host, and talks a little bit about the ways in which our county units, whatever they may be, whether they're clubs or whether they're parties, can start preparing for what's going to be a very important election this November. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the program. But it's important to remember that, campaigns spend massive statewide campaigns spend months and months making sure that their program is built to a capacity that can be successful in November. And it's important that we're doing the same thing at the county party and county club level as well. These things, like running a successful GOTV program, they don't happen overnight. We need to make sure that we're building a successful ramp to get there. And so with that, I'm going to try to share my screen, and we'll see how that goes. We've had a little bit of issues with screen sharing in the past. Okay. Successful so far. I'm going to try presentation, and we'll see if it still shares. And it's not sharing. Perfect. Oh, I didn't mean to stop my share. Oh, yes, I did actually. It's fine. Technology. We're built for it. Okay, so we are going to go back to screen sharing, but this time I'm not going to do the slideshow because it has never worked. But that's okay. It doesn't need to. You'll just get a preview of the next slides coming up. So the first thing that I want to say is, like I talked about before, right? This is building toward electoral success. This is going to be the finance portion where we talk a little bit about is one of the most important things you can do early on is to set up a pathway for financial success because everything in campaigns, unfortunately, like life, costs money. And we need to make sure that we have enough funds raised to be able to put together the programs that we're looking to have in order to be successful at the ballot box. But let's kind of go over a little bit about what we talked about last time, kind of see where our ramp is building toward. And then we can talk a little bit about the specifics of some of the financial things that you can do as a county party and a county unit to make sure that you're successful heading into November. So last time we talked a little bit about the different types of buckets of preparation, right? We started talking about finance as the most important thing to get started early on. And we're going to do prospecting a lot of different things, but mostly prospecting new folks and new volunteers into our organizations. After that would be training, where we get those new folks that we just brought in, trained up on the systems and the skills that we need for them to be successful. Then we get them out onto the doors of ground game, making phone calls, knocking doors, engaging voters and volunteers, and expanding our networks even further. After that, as we start getting closer and closer to election day, we need to start thinking about voter protection, the ways in which we can be equipped as county parties, as the closest units on the ground to where those precincts are going to be, to make sure that we're in a good position to ensure that no Alabama voter is being turned away, and if they are, that we have the resources necessary to be able to help them to make sure that they have a ballot cast no matter what. And then finally, GOTV. It is the culmination of all of these things. It's the friends we've made along the way, and it is how we end up having successful elections. It's the way Democrats have always won campaigns. It's by grassroots organizing. It's by creating a team that is robust and that is capable of meeting every challenge that comes before them. So like I said, getting ready for E-Day, Election Day, E-Day as we call it in campaigns, isn't something that happens overnight. Coordinated campaigns spend months and months and months preparing. And county parties should be just as invested in building toward a successful Election Day as a coordinated in a major statewide. So let's talk a little bit about finance. So as I alluded to a little bit before, everything in campaigns costs money. And I'm sure you've heard the phrase that an army travels on its stomach. Well, a campaign travels on its checkbook. Fundraising for state candidates through your own donors will be critical to equipping your team for success in November. Making sure that we're doing this early and continuously throughout the cycle is going to make sure that we're in the best position to succeed going into November. So that'll involve building up a store of permissible funds that'll allow us to better integrate with our operations with our campaigns. So for county parties specifically, most of them operate as a fiscal unit as a state PAC. Now that grants them a lot of freedom because our state fundraising laws are fairly lenient, right? Like somebody could come into the Lee County Democrats, for example, with $1 million check and say, "Here you go. I'd like to give you $1 million," and it could be deposited and spent the next day. Because that's Alabama, and we like to play fast and loose, like it's the Wild West. Now, that is great for the flexibility, right? Because if you have some angel investors that want to come in, all of a sudden, all of your needs and worries are gone, which could be great. Realistically, it's not actually going to happen like that. But it also allows for a lot more freedom and flexibility, because if you start dealing with federal campaigns, things get a little bit hairy. You got to start, reporting to the FEC, et cetera. Yes, Emily.
We had a question in the chat. Would you just briefly define what a PAC is, and specifically a state PAC?
Sure. Yeah. So a PAC is a political action committee, and political action committees are essentially organizations that have declared that they are going to be active in the political space, but they're do so in a partisan way. So there are obviously going to be a lot of things that happen in the political space. Some of them are going to be nonpartisan. There are organizations like 501c3s, which are full nonprofits, or 501c4s, which are nonprofit action committees, that have different rules associated with them as well. The biggest ones for those are that they can't be focused on partisan politics. They can't support a specific Democrat over a Republican, for example. PACs have the freedom to do that, and that gives them a lot more, I think, flexibility, and I think utility when we're talking about electoral success. No, not always. We have a lot of races in Alabama that are nonpartisan. Almost all of our mayors, for example, are nonpartisan races, for example. So, and things get sticky when you talk about partisan parties working with nonpartisan let's just not get involved in that. Like, let's talk about PACs, which are those organizations declared partisan, who are able to help those partisan candidates through a variety of different means. But specifically, those designations refer to finances and the way that they can raise money, the way they can spend money. So does that answer any questions? Great question. Also, great opportunity to tell you, this is far and away, of all of the buckets, my least strong subject. I'm an organizer at heart. I'm much better at spending money than I am at raising it. So, but I'll do my best to make sure that we're operating in compliance with Alabama's election finance laws. Which there are very few, but to make sure that we're also, doing things the right way. At the end of the day, there's going to be an underwriter to everything that I say, which is, if there's a question that in the work that you're doing about the money that you raise or the money that you want to spend, call the state party. We happen to have the single most talented compliance man in the Deep South. Brian Clemens is our compliance consultant, and he is insanely talented. Pick up the phone, give us a call. If you have a question, I guarantee you that guy knows the answer to it. So at the end of the day, that's always the best option, is to give us a call and ask for some help. Anywho, so we talked a little bit, which is a great transition into, so we want to make sure that we're best equipping ourselves to be successful in November. But this is UTCal. We have Democratic clubs. We might have some folks from other associated groups who might have different statuses. So one of the biggest things that we need to talk about when we're thinking about finance in the campaign space is to think about, who are we? Who is the organization that I'm working for right now? Now, most of the folks here are going to be associated with county parties or even Democratic clubs that are registered as state PACs. Now, like I said, PACs are allowed to do electioneering work. They're allowed to raise for specific partisan projects and in support of specific partisan candidates. And as I said before, most county parties are state PACs. This allows them a lot more flexibility in fundraising, because of that organizational status compared to nonprofit entities. But there are other entities in this space. You'll think about things like Planned Parenthood Action, for example, is a 501c4. That is a non-profit advocacy organization. So they are nonpartisan, but they are issue-based. Now, it just so happens that a lot of the candidates that they support are Democrats, because Democrats support their specific issue the way they want them to. But that is a different organization. They do not come out in favor of like one party or the other. They come out in favor of one issue or another. And C3s, those are true nonprofits, and they have even more restrictions about the ways that they can wield their powers. The important thing about both of those organizations is that they have to be nonpartisan, and even some of the work that we do as county parties has to be nonpartisan. For example, if you do a voter registration drive, that has to be offered to every single person who comes up and wants to register. You can't be asking them, are you going to vote for Republicans? Oh, you are? Get out of here. No, we can't do that. If somebody wants to register to vote at an event that the Lee County Democrats or the Montgomery County Democrats do, everybody gets to register to vote. It's a big deal. But other entities are better equipped for those kinds of events because they are necessarily nonpartisan. So C3s and C4s, especially in Alabama, have taken up a lot of that voter registration and voter education lift for some folks. It's important to understand that the campaign finance laws that apply to state PACs are different than the ones that apply to nonprofits. We're going to speak specifically about the stuff that applies to PACs, because that's going to be the group that we're working with probably most often as a group here at Blue School. And so it's always important to remember when we're first thinking about the ways that we can build our finances, we need to ask ourselves first, who are we and what can we do? Now, let's talk a little bit about county parties or PACs. So like I said, most of our county parties are PACs, and therefore they're allowed to engage in partisan political work. And some of the best ways that PACs can get started immediately financially are getting an office, hosting fundraisers, and hiring campaign interns. So let's talk a little bit about some of those things. Oh, did I scroll? Getting office, great. So county parties are required to have a brick and mortar location for party activities in an election year. It's part of our bylaws. They have to have them. Don't remember, there's a certain day out from election day that they have to be stood up and ready to go. Don't ask me what that day is. I don't know it off the top of my head, but that's okay. But it is a requirement in election years that our county parties have a brick and mortar location for folks to be able to turn out to. That's step number one, is raising funds from your members or from donors around your county to pay for a county party headquarters. That's a great first step in preparing for an election. Mostly because a county party headquarters can act sort of as a one-stop shop for folks interested in learning more, not only about our candidates and our party, but also our platform, the things that we believe in as progressives and as Democrats. So ensuring that you have one, and more importantly, that you have one that's easy to find, is critical when you're planning your new space. Now, I know I've been in a bunch of different campaigns, and everybody wants to have a beautiful, bright, shiny new office, and it's great to have that, right? Especially if you're working in it. But the most successful county party headquarters that I've ever seen have been in strip malls next to Chinese food restaurants. Like, they are accessible. They are things that if you say it's on the corner of Blop and Blop, people know where that is. You know, that is what you're looking for. Now, in the digital age, we're reliant less on walk-ins, right? This is every campaign we get a little bit further and further away from the 2008 Obama, people flooding in out of the woodwork to get involved. That's okay, but we still want to make sure that our offices are easily discoverable for folks who are just stopping by and want to learn a little bit more. So once we get our office or start fundraising to get our office, we can start thinking about doing other things to help out our teams. For example, hosting a fundraiser. So one immediate way that we can help prepare financially for election day is to be a resource to our candidates and their campaigns. Hosting a fundraiser on their behalf, where we invite people as a county party and have them cut checks specifically to this campaign, is a great way for us to ensure that our candidates and our policies are in a good place to be successful in November. Because it takes a logistical load off of a campaign. So much of a campaign is planning events, and it's a huge logistical lift especially for our down ticket candidates, for folks who don't have a lot of staff time to be able to give to every single project. So if we're able to host a fundraiser and take the logistical load off that campaign and deliver them a resource that they desperately need, cash, that is a huge deal when it comes to assisting our candidates and making sure that they can be as successful as possible. Now, you can host these events in a number of different ways, but one of the best places to do it is at local activists and party leaders' homes. It takes a really, really great advantage not only of our existing networks as activists and as party leaders, but it makes it more attainable for other members of the community who might be interested. Think about having a backyard cookout. I know I've been to a couple of fundraisers that were backyard cookouts before. A shout out to my friends over in Shelby County. But it's so much more discoverable that way. If you have, a food grilling out back, if you have music playing, like it just becomes something that people want to get involved in. We're interested in expanding our networks any way that we can, and having a fundraiser at someone's house, discoverable in the community, engaging folks who might not come to every single county party meeting. That's such a great way to build our network out and make sure that we have more folks that we can call on when it comes to GOTV time to get involved. And finally, hiring campaign interns. This can be so crucial. And it's important that we need to know that we don't need to break the bank to do this. But some county parties are going to be packed to the gills with volunteers ready to make your new headquarters building fully staffed for every single hour that is opened. That's great. But some might not be, and some might just need the added capacity of paid help. So fundraising for county party interns to help alleviate not only the organizing and administrative load is a fantastic idea, but it's a great way to start building a path for professionals in your community to take part in this field and give back to more candidates further and further down the line. Now, I've seen a bunch of different campaign internship programs. I've seen some be successful. I've seen some be less successful. But I think one of the best programs that I saw was actually in Kentucky, where one of my county parties had their own internship. So the coordinated campaign that I was working with for the Kentucky Democrats, we had an internship program. It was mostly focused on direct voter contact, which I would highly recommend leaning in on that, right? If you can pay a college student $500 a month to give 10 hours a week of their time, great. You can just go knock some doors, build a robust network of direct voter contact data. Amazing. And college kids are really well equipped to do that kind of stuff. That was the program that we had at the coordinated campaign level. It was a little bit more than that because Kentucky Democrats had a ton of money at the time. So it was $600 a month for 10 hours, $1,200 a month for 20 hours. You can play around with compensation like that. But the Fayette County Democrats, which was the county where Lexington was, my turf, they had their own program of interns that wasn't involved with the coordinated campaign, but it was involved with making sure that that they had somebody to come in every morning and turn the lights on. They had somebody who was there to shut down the office, make sure everything was locked. They had paid staffers, people who were responsible and who had a job description to describe their roles and responsibilities. Now, it can sound silly, when we think about, how many friends and neighbors we'll have who are interested in getting involved as volunteers. But sometimes it's nice to have that person that's like, no, this is your job. And it is so great that you're here to help us out, because now we have somebody who we can turn to and say, no matter what, if we need this thing done, we have somebody on staff who's capable of getting it done. So I'm a huge fan of county party internship programs. I think that they can be very, very helpful in alleviating the load from volunteers to make sure that everything is staffed and equipped as best it can be. And I think it also builds up this sort of mentality of, like I said, lowering the bar for professionals to get involved in this space. It can be very, very difficult for folks to figure out how they can do this job and do it as a full-time career. And if we have opportunities at the county level for folks to get involved as a paid staffer, that is just another step forward for these folks who are looking to build a resume going into political work. And it makes it more accessible for everybody, which is at the end of the day what we're looking for as progressives. Is we want more people to get involved in our process, not less. But Tom, there's so much more we want to do. What are all the different things that we could do? I get it. A big election is exciting, and we all want to help however we can. But finance can get tricky. And that's important that we remember that. Like this is very important, but it also can get very tricky. There are a lot of questions. Can I buy this yard sign? What does it have to say if I buy this yard sign? What does our lit look like? All that stuff. It's complicated, right? And we need to acknowledge that. It's important that voters know if they're seeing a piece of literature or a yard sign, who paid for it, and who authorized it. And what candidate is it for? All of those things are critically important, and they have financial and legal meanings behind each of those things. But getting involved in every single one of those things, right? Like explaining exactly what needs to be disclosed on what piece of literature versus what yard sign, that we'd be here for hours. But if there is a project or a program that you want to run, the state party stands as a resource for you guys every step of the way. We want to make sure that if there's a question, if you get a call and you have a campaign who says like we're trying to put together, let's say for example, Madison County. Let's say if Madison County wants to run a coordinated program with all of their county-wide offices, and they say we want to have one piece of literature for all of our county-wide offices, and none of the candidates want to spend any money on it. We want to spend money on it as a county party. What do we have to put on here to make sure that this passes our compliance tests? That's a great question to call down to the state party office and ask Brian about, because every single thing is going to be different depending on which candidates are involved on your, in this example, on your, shared piece of lit. What if there's a federal candidate involved? There's a lot of complicated things. We're here to make sure that we're answering those questions on a case-by-case basis to the best of our ability, so that you all are able to put on the program that's appropriate for your counties and also for your candidates and for your volunteers. We want to make sure that everybody here is having the best experience possible, and we're doing the things that we need to do to remain active and successful, but we're also doing those things in the right ways. So at the end of the day, if you have something that you want to do that we didn't talk about, which is going to be a lot of stuff, always call down. Give us a ring. That's exactly what we're here for. We have paid staff at the state party who is ready, willing, and able to help answer those questions, and we'll do that every single chance we can get. So, as I said a little bit there, there's going to be a slight federal flag, which is that all of these recommendations that I've been making have been in the context of county parties as state PACs. Once you start getting involved with federal campaigns and dealing with federal money, now we have a different set of standards that we're beholden to, which is the Federal Election Commission, which starts with, you heard me mention permissible funds earlier on in this presentation. That is where this kind of thing gets a little bit complex. Now, we don't want y'all doing federal stuff, because the second you start doing federal stuff, then you got to register as a federal PAC, and then now we got to do FEC reports, and it's a lot. So if there's anything that you want to do around federal candidates, give us a call first. Please do it. We're here to help. We'll figure out how best we can make sure that either you're able to do it or the entity that is able to do it gets you what you need. But there are going to be so many friends this year in 2024. We're going to have so many federal candidates who want to get you guys involved. We want to make sure that we're able to do that in the best ways possible, so that everybody's maintaining the statuses that they want to maintain. We're also being as successful as we can going into election day. So, are there any questions? I'm going to do my best to answer them, but like I said, I'm no finance expert. I'm much better at spending money than I am at raising it. So
there have been a few questions. Marianella had a question earlier, and then Marcia had one. So let's start with Marianella.
Cool.
Hello.
Hey, Marianella, how are you?
I'm good. Listen, I was thinking, since I don't have actually an office, what can I do? Can I rent something out, or because I do my meetings in the library?
Sure. Yeah, great question. So absolutely, you do not. When I talk about an office, and when we say that we need one for an election year, that we have to be honest with ourselves that like county parties look very different in a lot of different places in the state. That's okay. And that's why we only have the requirement for brick and mortar in election years. But yes, absolutely. The vast majority of county parties that I've worked with have temporary offices. They get them when they need them. They tear them down when they don't. They're expensive, Marianella. They just are. And it's okay to admit that. You know, renting a shopping front in a strip mall at $1,200 a month, that starts to eat through a lot of cash very quickly. We don't need to do that for a whole year. We need to do that for 6 months. And then we need to get out of that lease and get back to doing our cheaper public options like the public library. That's what those facilities like the public library are there for, right? Is to be able to make this more approachable and more attainable for county parties, especially ones that might not have a super robust cash flow, which is a-okay, right? But yes, you can absolutely rent something. If you have somebody who owns shopping spaces and might be willing to in-kind that to you, that is another fantastic option, so that you're not getting anything out of your bottom line. Again, if you have somebody who wants to in-kind donate office space, that is something that is super permissible. Just give us a call and we can talk you through exactly how you can file that to make sure that everybody in the state knows that this is a gift to you. And we can go from there. But yeah, you have a number of different options, but you don't need to buy something. You can absolutely rent something. That is 100% correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Marcia had a comment about it being really difficult to find short-term leases. I think that's probably all over the state. She says Shelby County Dems are trying a shared space option this year. So
Okay.
that's another.
Yeah. So I've seen a shared space office used successfully in Virginia. So when I was in Virginia, I worked with not one, but 2 different field regions. And so they had a bunch of different staging locations that they used going into Election Day. So one of the campaigns that was part of the coordinated that was running in Virginia, their office space was a shared working space, right? Like one of those places where you rent a cubicle and you have access to all of the, you have a Keurig and a copier and all that stuff. Great. That'll work. Everything works. There's no such thing as a wrong answer here, because let's be honest, it is difficult to find short-term leases, especially commercial short-term leases. And not every campaign is going to be blessed with resources the way a lot of the ones that I've worked on have been, right? Like we had the opportunity when we were in Kentucky to be able to throw money at a problem. If I found an office that I wanted, I obviously couldn't go crazy on rent, but I could go back to ops and say, this is perfect. But they're going to charge us a premium since they normally sign only 2-year leases. So they're going to charge us $250 a month more for rent. That will be crushing for some of our county parties. That was not even a little bit of a problem when you're working for the governor of Kentucky. Like we just made that happen. We have to be realistic about how there are differences in the amount of resources available. But at the end of the day, whatever works best for you, for your county party, and for your candidates, that is something that'll always be successful for us. Now, you might try it and it might not be successful just in practice. That's okay. That's a learning experience, and we can kind of figure out what the next option is in the next cycle, because every time we do this, we're learning, right? So you could give this a shot, say, hey, this wasn't exactly what we needed, but man, that bottom line was really great. We weren't breaking the bank. Might be worth it. It's all about cost benefits here too. Like nothing's ever going to be a one size fits all answer for our county parties. There'll be some places across the state where it's easier, right? Like Montgomery, it's going to be vastly easier for us to find offices than it would be for folks in Shelby County. It just is. It's a more friendly county for Democrats. There are more Democrats who own office spaces who will be willing to cut you good deals. It's a whole bunch of different things. We're dealing with peaks and valleys in the state, and we need to be able to square that circle.
Tammy, do you have a question on this topic?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
What about, can you get space from other organizations that I guess what I'm looking at is, I mean, Mary and Ella, I don't know where you are. You're down in Dale. But I guess my question is, like, if there's a union there
Labor
that's got,
union, for example.
yeah, a
Okay.
labor union, can you get their office space? And I kept trying to think of other things besides labor unions that might have actual office space that you could kind of jump on, or is that too big of a problem?
Yeah.
And I'm
So yeah, it depends on. So again, this is just off the top of my head, and I'll direct you if you have this specific question. Give us a call. And so for example, if there is a union in Dale that you approach and you want to see if you can use some of their business space to host your events, great. Give the state party a call, and Brian will be able to talk you through this. Off the top of my head, the way I'm thinking about this is what kind of entity am I doing business with, right? Dale County is going to be a PAC. Great. Now, am I dealing with the IBEW or am I dealing with the IBEW Action Fund? Because if it's the Action Fund and they're a PAC themselves, now we're starting to get a little bit squirrely, because in Alabama, one thing that is not permissible is something called a PAC-to-PAC transfer. Now, and I know this is something that comes up a lot for us on this call because our county parties have to purchase the voter file or vote builder from the state party. And it's not because we want to charge you for that, but it's because it is illegal for us to give it to you. It is considered a PAC-to-PAC transfer. So we have to charge fair market value for a good and service in order to make that thing happen. So if, for example, there's another group, a law firm that wants to give you some office space, that is a different thing, because they're not operating as a PAC. But if it's another PAC, which some unions may operate as, especially in the electoral cycle, that is something where you definitely want to get pre-clearance from the party before you enter into any kind of agreement, because we would hate for y'all to do a handshake deal and get kind of stuck in a place where you don't want to be. So if at any time you have any questions about things like that, give the state party a call, walk us through the exact situation that you're going through, and we'll give you an answer to the best of our ability. And we're always going to make sure that we're erring on the side of you guys being as safe as possible in the dealings that you're making around our candidates and your elections.
I just want to really quickly, before we move on, does anybody on the call have any experience with having a county office space that can sort of talk about why we would want to do that and what, practically does that look like? Tom, you do. I do too, but maybe some others do as well. Go ahead,
I
Tom.
do in Houston County.
So what would you say, Linda, what would you say? How do you use it? What are the benefits? Like, what would you say to recommend this to folks who haven't gotten around to doing it yet or haven't been able to?
Well, how we're able to do this is that there's a rental company here called Poplar Building. And not only do they rent storage spaces, but they have a building where they have petitioned off and put offices in there. They have everything from, the really large offices to really small offices. And we were able to get the smaller office and pay $181 a month for it. It already has desks, filing cabinet, everything in there.
Wow.
And yeah, so if you can find a place like that, then, and honestly, I didn't even know it existed until someone told me that they really did have offices in there. There's no sign outside the building, nothing. So when I called, she said yes. And I was like, great. And what it does is it allows me to have a central place to keep important documents, because if it's at my house and something happens to me, no one can get to it. Okay. So I have all of the elections data there filed, the minute meetings, the treasury reports, and I also have something I created called a pass down book. And that pass down book has got all the important documents in it for that year, with the website address where you get these things from. So anybody could go in, get that pass down book and run the next meeting. So for me, it's, you know, we have 4 keys to it that we swap in and out, and it's saves a lot of people. I live in Wicksburg, so no one wants to drive all the way out here to get something. So that's why it's beneficial for us.
What else do you do out of that office? Do you hold meetings there? Do you have
I
walk-ins?
train out of that office. Like,
train.
yeah, like today, a young guy wanted to help. And so he's going to be doing a lot of my admin stuff, updating my documents, Google documents for me. So I also use it as, probably shouldn't, but I can clear people for their felonies. I can pick them up, bring them there, and interview them in private, walk them through the process, turn my computer around and show them that, you know, this is what you were charged with, and this is why it does not disqualify you. If it does, then we do the paperwork to get it straightened out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we've used it for a lot of different reasons. It's too small to do any type of, you know, meetings in, but we have had meetings in the lobby of that building after hours.
Okay. Thank
So,
you, Linda. Thanks for
mhm.
sharing that. We had
Yep.
an office here briefly in 2018. My husband was a candidate. And it was in a strip mall, and it was next to a bike shop and a quick cash loan place. And I will say that people got very excited about that. I mean, people really, when we had the grand opening, just a ton of people came. We ran some canvassing out of that space. We had people drop in. We had all the signs. I mean, that was 2018. There were a lot of candidates, but there was a lot going on. But I think that if we can make it happen in our counties, which is difficult, it can create a lot of excitement in our communities and with our members. So that's what I would say. And Tom, what else would you say would be, how do you sell this to those of us who
Yeah.
are having
So I'm a huge office apologist. I had and I guess I'll use my example from Kansas, because both of my offices, well, we'll get to a little bit about one of the offices, but one of my offices was a county party office, and it was wonderful. It was great. One, it was permissible because I was working for a state candidate, and it was a state PAC, so it made it easy. But they were very, very blessed. The Shawnee County Dems were very, very blessed because they were the home county of the sitting governor. So they were doing fairly okay for cash. I mean, they're not they're Democrats in Kansas. They're not flush with cash, y'all, but they were doing all right. They had the same office for the better part of a decade. And it was next to a Chinese buffet. It was in the same parking lot as a ballet school and a Godfather's Pizza. And everybody knew the corner that it was on, right? They knew, like, if you were calling, like, one thing that I used it for was my organizers would do their call time out of it. So they would do their call, their volunteer recruitment in the office every night. We would block off 5 to 8. We'd spend 3 hours making phone calls every single night without fail. It was call time. There was a phrase that we use in campaigns called "call time is sacred." Nothing is getting in the way of my organizers making their dials and recruiting volunteers. Period. So we'd sit there every night at all at the same table, making our dials, coaching each other, listening to each other's asks, things like that. It was a great resource there, but when you get somebody on the phone, you're like, "Oh, I'm calling. We're launching some canvassers this weekend at the Shawnee County Dems." They're like, "Oh, is that right down there by China Buffet?" We're like, "Yeah, that's the one." They're like, "Okay, great, we'll see you then." It's like amazing. Everybody knew where it was, which is great. But there was that excitement, right? Where like sometimes Kansas was less so, but when you have places like Kentucky, some folks when we stood up our field office for Governor Beshear, folks would come in and be like, "I didn't even know there were Democrats out here. Well, great to see y'all." Like there is that excitement around it, right? And Lexington is a fairly progressive city, so let's not get out of control. Fayette County was the strongest performing county by a partisan lean of the entire Commonwealth, which I'm not going to take any credit for because I left a little bit early. But I mean, if it was me, if it was. But anyway, but there is so much to be able to have. And I think that's something that I really enjoyed about it is like being able to make sure that everybody was on the same page. And when you talk to someone, you'd have a street address that you can send them to. That matters to people. You know, if you're just out wearing your candidate t-shirt and somebody says, oh, great, where did you get that? Or like, oh, you can find out more about this candidate and see if you can want to pick up a little bit more information. Here's the address. And you can give them a physical address that they can go to and they can stop by and learn a little bit more. It's great if it's big enough. A county party office can be great for your monthly meetings. It can be great for subcommittee meetings. It can be great for any kind of material prep that you may have, right? It can be great for hosting office. Some of us, I really like getting into the office. I like to keep work and home as separate as possible. So if I can go into the office to do some work, even if it's all, don't quote me on this because it's really bad, but even if it's on an off day and I need to do some work, sometimes I'll go into the office. Having that space where you can be in campaign mode is great, you know, where you can kind of just like work all in on your campaign stuff, shut it down, lock it up, and leave everything behind. Also a fantastic thing. So I'm a huge fan of offices. Now, I did have one county party. I had a big turf in Kansas. I had Shawnee County, which is home to Topeka. And then I had Riley County, which is about an hour and a half away. It's Manhattan, Kansas, home of Kansas State. Saturday's a Catter Day. And they got rid of their county party office. They had done it during the pandemic as a cost savings. I wasn't a huge fan of that. They had seen declining attendance in their meetings since they got rid of it. You know, it wasn't a great scene. So when we came in with the governor's campaign and we had the cash to stand up a field office, we were able to offer them a small a room in our field office where they could conduct their Riley County Democrats work, which was great. They were really appreciative of it. They were able to do their monthly meetings there because, let's be honest, the work that we were doing as door knockers and as organizers was not keeping us in the office at the same time that they're having their county party meetings, which is great. We would just tell them, hey, our organizers have their day off on Monday. Could you do your business on Mondays? So there's not going to be any overlap. They said, sure thing. And it worked perfectly. But they were very appreciative of having a space to be able to say, Riley County Democrats, if you need your materials, if you need to get trained, go to this location. And knowing that there would be a staff member there, one of my team, who would be able to train them and get them everything they needed. So I'm a big fan of offices, huge fan.
So Marcia, why don't you go? Marcia, you had a couple of questions. You had one about paying interns, and you've got more questions about offices. So why don't you go ahead and ask them? Right. Marcia has laryngitis. So this is her question in the chat. I think all the reasons to have a county party office are pretty clear, but I think many of us, like her and me too, need strategies for finding a reasonably priced space. Where do we look? Who are the possible contacts? Professional Dems, unions, what else? Maybe we could name a couple of things. And if anyone else on the meeting has ideas, Linda had the idea of temporary spaces.
Temporary spaces are great. Unions, great. And remember that each of these leads doesn't have to be where your answer is, but they can get you to where your answer is, right? So you can call your union and say, I'm looking for space. They'll be like, we don't have any. But let me tell you about this guy that I know who owns it's going to be 6, 7, 8, 12 degrees of separation to get to where you need to be. So let's not just stop at our first ask. Let's keep going beyond that. But labor unions are great. If you have public spaces, like if you have a very robust library that you're able to rent out public space in, like be able to create a schedule where you can have things regularly there. I'm not opposed to that. for a while, when I was in Kansas, the Shawnee County Dems office flooded. Ugh. Thanks to the Chinese buffet next door, ironically enough. But we had to do some of our business at the public library. One, because it was everybody knew where it was. So if we said we're not doing our campus training at the Shawnee Dems, we're doing it at the library. It was an easy flip back and forth between those things. But it's also can be cost savings as well. I would say another great place where I found my offices in Kentucky was looking at commercial real estate websites, like the commercial version of realtor.com and stuff like that. And just asking the question. I mean, it sounds silly, but you're going to see a bunch of places that are like vacant and they're looking for 2-year commercial leases. But call them and say, hey, I don't know if this is moving or not. I've seen this has been listed for 6 months or whatever, and I'd be happy to give you a 6-month contract. You're not making any money on it right now, but I can give you a tenant for 6 months, whip it back up into shape a little bit, because we all know that vacant spaces need to be occupied to be in a better situation, right? So some of them will be looking, one, at least you're floating part of my bill for a little bit of this. Like, I want a 2-year tenant, but I'll take a 6-month at this stage, and I'll take somebody who will come in and sweep and come in and turn the lights on and come in and use the refrigerator.
Scare away the mice.
Exactly right. So
Linda says also, if you have a real estate agent in your membership, and ask everyone on your list. I think it's the top thing here is to sort of make this a priority with your organization over the next few months, and sort of get it out there that you're looking for that, and see what happens, see what emerges. Marcia had another question that I want to get to. It was regarding paying campaign interns, or
Sure.
I guess it would be county organization interns. Paying them. If we have questions about if there are going to be tax issues with that, I know there's a form that you would file.
Yeah. So most of the campaign interns that I've seen have been 1099s, contractors. Usually an intern will not be working enough hours in a week to qualify for full-time status, which is probably a good thing, right? Like, we're progressives. We want to pay folks what they're worth, and we also don't want to stretch ourselves too thin financially here. $500 a month for 10 hours a week from an intern seems like a pretty good deal, but there's also only 10 hours a week that they're working, right? So we don't have to worry about them coming even close to full-time status. So every internship program that I've seen has run as a 1099. That, with that in mind, that also alleviates tax worries for the organizations, right? Because if they're contractors, they're responsible for paying their taxes themselves, which is a big deal. But again, any questions that you do have about standing up an internship program, give the state party a call, and we'd be happy to answer anything like that. But yes, those are the successful internship programs that I've seen have been contract programs.
I will say too, if you happen to live in an area that has a community college or a university, we recently got an intern. I'm near Auburn University, and we'll have an intern who will be working for college credit.
Yeah.
And a lot of departments are very ready to, assign credit for that. And a lot of college students are really looking for these experiences.
Yeah, I mean, we can't forget, especially like these poli-sci students who are, between sophomore and junior year, right? They're looking to get some experience in this field, and they might be a barista at Starbucks for their cash, but they might be interested in volunteering if we can get them a cool title to put on their resume and give them some experience doing political stuff, right? So if you call them a campaign fellow is a term that we use a lot in our field. Give them a fellowship, and have them volunteer. That's a great thing that they can throw on their resume. pretty well established universal lexicon in the political space as well. So everybody who looks at the resume will know what a fellow is. Okay, like they're either a volunteer or a part-timer. Great, and we can talk a little bit more about that. But that gets them a more robust thing to put on their resume in their field, which is very hard to get when you're a poli-sci undergrad, right? Like you're just trying to you're trying to figure out anything that you can to build up a resume in your field. That is a very easy step to take, to be like, oh, I was a fellow for the Lee County Democrats with the Lee County coordinated that they ran. And so I did a lot of direct voter contact. I did a lot of voter education. I did trainings. Okay, cool. Those are all things that we're looking for when we're talking about folks transitioning into the nonprofit space. And that's all stuff that we can talk about too, right? Which is like, if you're trying to pitch folks like this, community college students, 4-year undergrads and stuff like that. If you're looking at how you can sell this to kids to get involved, either volunteering their time as fellows or doing internships that are paid, give me a ring. We can talk about how you can frame this to them in a way that shows them the value add of volunteering or getting involved in this way, and make sure that you're able to prepare them for the conversations that they're going to have about their experience working with your organization, because that's also something too. When we bring somebody into our family, we want to make sure that we're taking care of them too, right? And we want to be able to make sure that we're equipping them to talk about the experience that they have with us. So that's an important thing, and something that I've learned as a manager, is having how to teach people to sell themselves and their experiences, which is great.
That's
yeah.
great. Marcia asked about a intern job description. That's probably a resource that we could provide and put together if people were to ask for it. We probably have to wrap up right now. Does anybody else have another question? Can we have a session on PAC reporting to the state FCPA reporting site?
Sure. Let me reach out to Brian, see if he can put something together for y'all to talk a little bit about what reporting looks like as a state PAC.
Great question. Okay, we will follow up with you on that, Tom. Okay. Well, Tom, thank you so much.
I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now. Sorry.
Oh, sure. Thanks so much to Tom, and thanks so much to all of you who joined us this evening. For Alabama Blue School. Yeah, let's all do a silent thank you to Tom.
Anytime,
it's not
guys.
the pandemic anymore. We don't have to do that. There you go. Marianella's got it. Tom, next month, tell us what your topic's going to be.
Oh, great. Let me just remind myself what it's going to be. Oh, prospecting.
Yay.
Next month is going to be prospecting. This is one of my favorite things, right? Because this is what organizers do best, which is take a network and make it bigger. So we're going to talk about, I'm sure y'all have your standard folks who come in every single month. Great. We need them. The repeat customers are what keep our organizations going in down cycles. But we're going to need to expand that footprint, and we're going to need to expand it fast. But you don't need to start from scratch and just make raw calls, which you will do if you're doing your job right. If you're making calls into the phone book, that is the right thing to do as well. But there are also other networks that exist already that you don't need to reinvent the wheel in order to make sure that you're expanding your base. So we'll talk a little bit about some of our allied organizations that you can start with by going as a representative of the party to say, hey, we exist, we're here, and it's 2024, which means instead of working here, come down work with me so we can make things happen. But we can talk a little bit about the best places to start in expanding that network and prospecting new folks into your organizations.
That's great. Okay, I want to see all of y'all with us next month, third Tuesday of the month, and you'll get the announcement, and we'll all meet back here. Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.